Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. Number the terminal frequency. I've always been drawn to abandoned places. There's something about the silence, the way nature reclaims what humanity leaves behind. That's why I became an urban explorer, to document these forgotten spaces before they're gone forever. But after what happened at the Blackwood radio tower, I don't think I'll ever explore again. It started with a forum post on an obscure urban exploration message board. Someone with the username RadioHead78 shared coordinates to what they called the most unsettling broadcast tower you'll ever find. They claimed the tower had been abandoned since 1978 after a tragic incident, but strangely, it still broadcast on certain frequencies. No details about what happened, just a warning: don't go at night, and whatever you hear, don't respond to it. Of course, that only made me want to go more. The Blackwood radio tower stood in a clearing about 15 miles outside of town, accessible only by a winding dirt road that hadn't seen maintenance in decades. My Jeep bounced and rattled over potholes and exposed roots as the late afternoon sun filtered through dense pine forest. I'd planned it perfectly: arrive with enough daylight to explore, but close enough to sunset to capture that golden hour light photographers dream about. The first sight of the tower made me stop the car and just stare. It rose above the tree line like a rusted sentinel, its red and white paint faded to a sickly pink and dirty beige. The structure itself was a standard lattice design, but something about its proportions seemed wrong: too narrow at the base, too wide at the top, as if the perspective had been distorted. I blinked and the effect disappeared. Just a trick of the light, I told myself. The broadcast building at the base was a simple cinderblock structure with boarded windows and a heavy metal door that hung partially open. Graffiti covered some walls, but less than I'd expected for a place abandoned for over 40 years. Most abandoned places I'd explored were canvases of spray paint and teenage declarations of existence. This place had only a few tags, and they were old, faded, as if even vandals avoided lingering here. I pulled out my camera and began documenting the exterior. The silence struck me immediately. No birds, no insects. Not even wind through the trees, just a heavy, waiting silence that seemed to absorb the sound of my footsteps and the click of my camera shutter. I approached the door, running my hand along the rusted metal. The hinges groaned as I pushed it open wider. The sound echoed inside, bouncing off bare concrete walls. I switched on my flashlight and stepped into the darkness. The interior was surprisingly intact. No collapsed ceiling, no major water damage, just dust, cobwebs, and abandoned equipment. The main room housed several desks with ancient radio broadcasting equipment, mixing boards, reel-to-reel tape machines, microphones suspended from ceiling mounts. Everything looked frozen in time, as if the operators had simply stood up one day and walked away, leaving everything behind. In the corner, a large analog clock had stopped at 3:33. Something about that time made my skin prickle. I snapped several photos, the flash momentarily illuminating the room in harsh white light. That's when I heard it. A faint crackle of static. I froze, listening. There it was again, the unmistakable sound of radio static coming from somewhere in the building. I followed the sound to a door-marked transmission room. Inside, a bank of equipment lined the walls. Most of it was dark and silent, covered in decades of dust, except for one unit. A small red light blinked steadily on what appeared to be the main transmitter. I approached it slowly, my flashlight beam revealing dials and meters. One meter was moving, its needle flickering slightly in the active range. That's impossible, I whispered to myself. The power should have been cut decades ago, yet here was equipment, still running, still broadcasting, something. Curiosity overcame caution. I noticed a pair of headphones hanging on a hook beside the transmitter. They were old school, heavy with large padded ear cups. I hesitated only briefly before picking them up. The cord was still connected to the transmitter's output jack. I blew off the dust and placed them over my ears. Static hissed immediately, making me wince. I reached for the volume dial and turned it down. The static continued at a more bearable level, pulsing slightly as if breathing. I listened for several minutes, hearing nothing but the white noise. Then, so faint I almost missed it, a voice. "Is anyone, please?" "Help!" I yanked the headphones off, my heart pounding. The voice had been so faint, so distant, I couldn't be sure I'd actually heard it. Maybe it was just my brain finding patterns in the static. That happens, right? Audio pareidolia. But what if it wasn't? What if someone was actually broadcasting? Maybe some ham radio operator had found the frequency and was using it. Or maybe, and this thought sent a chill through me, maybe someone was trapped somewhere, sending out a distress signal. I put the headphones back on. "Hello," I said, noticing a microphone attached to the console. "Is someone there?" The static continued unchanged. I waited, listening intently. Nothing. I was about to remove the headphones again when the static changed. It became rhythmic, almost like Morse code, but not quite. Then the voice returned, clearer this time. "You shouldn't have come back, Daniel." I ripped the headphones off again, my blood turning to ice. Daniel, my name. How could anyone know my name? I hadn't told Radiohead 78 who I was. I hadn't told anyone I was coming here. Daylight was fading fast. Through the small window in the transmission room, I could see the sky turning a deep purple. I needed to leave. Now. I gathered my camera equipment and headed for the exit, moving faster than I'd like to admit. As I reached the main door, a thunderous metallic groan echoed from above. I looked up through the open door to see the tower itself caught in the last rays of sunlight. For a moment, I could have sworn the entire structure shifted slightly, like a tree swaying in wind. But there was no wind, and radio towers don't move like that. I practically ran to my Jeep, throwing my equipment in the passenger seat. The key turned in the ignition, but the engine didn't catch. I tried again. Nothing. A third time. The battery seemed fine, the lights came on, but the engine refused to start. Come on, I muttered, pounding the steering wheel in frustration. The sun had fully set now, leaving me in the rapidly darkening clearing with only my Jeep's headlights illuminating the broadcast building. I pulled out my phone to call for help. No service, of course. I sat there for several minutes trying to calm down and think rationally. The voice in the headphones, I must have imagined it. Or maybe I'd picked up some random transmission from elsewhere. As for my car not starting, that was just bad timing. These things happen. I decided to try the engine one more time before resigning myself to spending the night in the Jeep. I turned the key, and to my immense relief, the engine roared to life. I didn't question my good fortune, just threw the Jeep into reverse and started backing down the dirt road. That's when my radio turned on by itself. Static filled the car, loud and insistent. I reached for the power button, but pressing it did nothing. I tried the volume knob, also unresponsive. The static continued, filling the car with white noise as I navigated the dark, twisting road. Then cutting through the static, "Turn around, Daniel, come back." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The voice was clearer now, a man's voice, deep and somehow familiar. "You left something important behind." I kept driving, faster now, tires slipping on the uneven dirt road. The trees on either side seemed to press closer, branches reaching out like grasping hands. "You can't leave yet, the broadcast isn't finished." I punched the radio repeatedly, trying to silence it. Nothing worked. The voice continued, growing louder, more insistent. "We've been waiting for you. 43 years we've been waiting. 43 years. Since 1978, since whatever tragic incident had supposedly occurred." I rounded a bend in the road and slammed on the brakes. A figure stood in the middle of the path, illuminated by my headlights. A man in what looked like an old-fashioned broadcaster's suit, complete with a narrow tie. His face was hidden in shadow despite the direct light. I laid on the horn, but the figure didn't move. I couldn't go around him. The road was too narrow, with dense forest on both sides. I'd have to either drive through him or... The radio static suddenly cleared completely, and the voice spoke with perfect clarity. "You have to finish the broadcast, Daniel. It's your turn now." The figure in the road raised his head, and in the harsh glare of my headlights, I saw that where his face should have been was only static, a swirling, shifting mass of black and white noise, like a television tuned to a dead channel. I threw the Jeep into reverse and hit the gas, not caring about the rough terrain. I'd find another way out, any way out. The tires spun in the dirt before catching, and I shot backward. In my rearview mirror, I could see the figure still standing there, watching me retreat. The radio continued. "Running won't help. The signal always finds its receiver." I reached the clearing with the broadcast building and spun the Jeep around, looking for another path out. There had to be another road, a service access, something. My headlights swept across the tower, and I noticed something I'd missed before. There were shapes moving on the tower, climbing its lattice structure. Human shapes, dozens of them, all with the same static-filled voids where their faces should be. One of them turned toward my headlights, and I recognized the clothing, the same outfit I was wearing right now. Same jacket, same boots. Even the camera around its neck matched mine. The radio crackled again. "You see now, you've always been here, Daniel. Every explorer who comes here becomes part of the broadcast." I floored the accelerator, driving straight into the woods. Branches whipped against the windshield as I crashed through the underbrush. I didn't care about the damage to my Jeep. I just needed to get away. The radio signal began to break up as I put distance between myself and the tower, but I could still make out fragments. "Signal reaches everywhere, no escaping, becomes part of you." After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I broke through the tree line onto a paved road. I didn't recognize it, but it didn't matter. It led away from the tower, and that was all I cared about. I drove until the static on the radio finally died, replaced by blessed silence. I didn't stop driving until I reached my apartment in the city, 3 hours later. I left my equipment in the Jeep and went straight inside, double-locking the door behind me. I was safe now. I was home. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the faceless figures climbing the tower. I heard the voice from the radio. Around 3 a.m., I gave up and went to my computer. I needed to understand what had happened at that tower in 1978. The search results were sparse. A few newspaper archives mentioned the Blackwood Broadcasting Company, which had operated several radio stations in the region during the 1960s and 70s. There was nothing about a tragic incident, though just a brief notice that the company had ceased operations in late 1978 due to financial difficulties. I dug deeper, finding an online archive of broadcasting history. There finally was a mention of the Blackwood Radio Tower. Operations terminated September 17, 1978, following the disappearance of the night staff. Equipment was left in place pending investigation. Disappearance. Not financial difficulties. I searched for more information about the missing staff but found nothing. It was as if the whole incident had been deliberately obscured, buried under vague corporate statements. As dawn broke, I finally fell into an exhausted sleep at my desk. I dreamed of the tower, of climbing its endless lattice structure toward a blood-red sky. At the top, instead of broadcasting equipment, there was only a mouth, a massive, static-filled void that spoke with the voice from the radio. The broadcast never ends, Daniel, it just finds new voices. I woke with a start to the sound of static. For a moment I thought I was still dreaming, but the noise was coming from my laptop speakers. The screen showed only snow, like an old television with no signal. But from that visual static came an audio hiss that gradually resolved into words. "We see you, Daniel. We're coming for you." I slammed the laptop shut and backed away from my desk. This wasn't possible. I was miles from the tower. Whatever had happened there couldn't follow me here. My phone buzzed on the desk, a text message from an unknown number. "Check your camera." With trembling hands, I retrieved my camera from my equipment bag. I turned it on and navigated to the photo gallery. The first few images were what I expected, exterior shots of the broadcast building, the tower against the sunset sky. But then the photos changed, images I hadn't taken, couldn't have taken. Me entering the building, me examining the equipment, me putting on the headphones. The angles were impossible, as if someone had been watching me from corners where no one stood, from behind equipment I had faced directly. The final image made my blood freeze. It showed me, right now, sitting at my desk looking at these very photos on my camera. I looked up slowly, scanning my empty apartment with new terror. The photo had been taken from the perspective of someone standing in the doorway to my bedroom. I turned toward the doorway. Nothing was there. But as I watched, static began to fill the empty space, coalescing into a human shape. The static faced broadcaster from the road. I ran, out of my apartment, down the stairs, into the street. I left everything behind, my phone, my wallet, my keys. I just ran. That was 3 days ago. I'm writing this from a library computer several towns over. I don't know how much time I have before they find me again. The static follows me. I hear it in every electronic device, passing cars with their radios, televisions glimpsed through windows, cell phones of people walking by. Always that same voice calling me back to the tower. Last night, in the cheap motel where I've been hiding, I woke to find my room filled with static-faced figures. They stood silently around my bed, watching. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. One of them leaned down close to my face and whispered, "The broadcast needs a new voice, Daniel. The old ones are wearing out. We've chosen you." When I blinked, they were gone. But on the motel television, through the static, I could see the Blackwood Radio Tower. At its top, a red light blinked steadily, calling me home. I think I understand now. The tower doesn't just broadcast signals, it broadcasts people. Turns them into signals. The disappearance in 1978 wasn't an ending, it was a transformation. Those people became part of the broadcast, their consciousness converted to radio waves, endlessly transmitting. And now they want me to join them. I've tried destroying every electronic device I can access. I've tried putting distance between myself and the tower. Nothing works. The signal finds me. It's getting stronger, clearer. I can hear it now even without a radio. A constant static in my head, punctuated by that voice. "Come back to the tower, Daniel. It's time to broadcast." My reflection in the library window is beginning to blur. This morning in the motel bathroom mirror, I saw static starting to form where my face should be. I think this will be my last communication. I'm going back to the tower tonight, not because I want to, but because I'm already there. I've always been there ever since I first heard about it. The signal reached out and made me part of the broadcast long before I ever set foot in that building. If you're reading this, please stay away from the Blackwood Radio Tower. Don't look for it, don't listen for its broadcast. If you hear static on your radio, change the channel immediately, because the broadcast never ends, it just finds new voices. And if you ever hear someone calling your name through the static, don't answer, don't even listen. By the time you hear it, it's already too late. The signal has found its receiver, and soon you'll be part of the broadcast too.